afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to see so many of you here on this special occasion. My name is Kimberly Simmons, and I'm the new Executive Director for Rhode Island Coalition to End Homelessness. As you know, the Coalition works alongside community organizations, social service agency advocates, and persons with lived experience with one goal, that is to end homelessness in Rhode Island. And we are excited here today with some really good news, which yesterday afternoon we would never have known, but Governor McKee proposed a budget amendment allocating roughly $30 million to support and stabilize our state of homelessness system. And it is so critical. I mean, we are very excited, but we don't want to let up. We are important in the process. It's not gone through yet, although this is very, very different and unusual. We have to still apply the pressure, still educate folks on the need and why this is so vital to the state of Rhode Island. So this is welcome news to all of us, all of the stakeholders involved and advocates who've been trying so hard to make sure that we have the resources. And we're thankful to Governor McKee and Secretary Pryor for their leadership. More is needed to support unhoused Rhode Islanders who are still living on, on the street. And recent data collected by the state's Homelessness Management Information System estimates that 529 Rhode Islanders who are, experience unsheltered homelessness at the beginning of April 2024, a 645% increase since January 2019. Homelessness has increased primarily due to the lack of affordable housing, causing hundreds of elderly families with children and people who are sick and dying to be forced into homelessness for the very first time. We're asking state leaders to support Governor McKee's proposed amendment. Without this much needed funding, hundreds more Rhode Islanders will become unsheltered and exacerbate an already burdened homelessness system. I am so proud to introduce our leaders today, but I also want to recognize those who are in the room. The special recognition, Senator Acosta. Representative Speakman. Representative Tanzi. Representative Handy. And also our agency leaders who are in the room. We're so thrilled to have you as well, and that's Eileen Hayes. Individuals who have been tirelessly working for this effort. Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Representative Tanzi has served the people of Narragansett and South Kingston in District 34 since she was first elected in November 2010. She's a member of the House of Finance Committee and chairs its Human Service Subcommittee. So we welcome you. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Good afternoon. It is my honor and my pleasure to be here today. And I just want to point out, because those of you at home don't know, that this room met its capacity 3 times over. And so the vast majority of people had to be shuffled out into overflow rooms. And it dawned on me, very obviously, right, that there's an overflow capacity in the shelters, and that there is unexamined and unaccounted for urgency in the need for housing people. And I just, I want to, it was that juxtaposition of the overflow and the overflow. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to come out here today and to make sure that we don't forget and that we are fully aware of the situation. Another surprising thing happened last night, as was alluded to. We got the call that the governor is introducing the budget amendment, and I cannot help but say thank you again to all of you for your advocacy, because that's not something that happens easily in our state. Your voices are heard, and we understand. I think for the first time in a long time, I'm getting goosebumps just saying that. Your advocacy has worked. So I just want to say, first and foremost, I appreciate this budget amendment. I want to thank the Secretary as well as the Governor for dedicating state funding to respond to the consistently rising rates of homelessness. I'm going to need my glasses. And we do need to have a plan to address this crisis. And the action plan that is being presented today, provided by the Coalition of Shelter Providers, is something that we seriously need to consider and to continue to push for. And with the plan in place, we won't be the last to respond. We won't be responding last minute to these crunches like we are now. We need to be proactive and we need to be collaborative, and this is just a great start to that process. And our state is already feeling the strain of having so many people unhoused. It's obvious when so many hundreds of applications for every apartment that comes up. The urgency with which the House is responding to the housing crisis. It's something that any of us who know someone who is looking for a place to live right now can understand. No matter what income bracket you're in, the pressure is on people and it's continuing to grow. But when those homes and those houses and those apartments aren't there for people, when people are forced to live outside, that creates a burden on services for police, fire, rescue, and hospitals. When we decrease shelter funding, the costs of these services do increase. And we can't forget that it is important to make these investments now. But it's also the right thing to do. It's a moral obligation that we as a state have, and it's the right thing to do. I want to thank, I see Dr. John Lombardi came in while I began speaking. I want to thank him for his longstanding advocacy for the homeless in our community. And with that, I want to invite you all, while you're here in the State House, to meet your reps and your senators. If you haven't already, meet with them today and get them to understand that while the governor has made this proposal, it is the first step. We, as the House, need to recognize the need for that and keep it in that budget because there are so many competing interests. And then the Senate needs to pass the budget with that money in it. So, again, make yourselves heard, make yourselves seen, and let's get this done. Thank you all.
Yes, I also would like to welcome Representative Lombardi and thank you as well for being present and supportive. In addition, I look out here and I see so many from all of the organizations that are doing on the groundwork to make sure that we're able to advocate and get some work done like this. And so I appreciate those of you who are here representing organizations, and also for those of you representing those who've been unsheltered and have lived experience, because without your voices, this wouldn't even be possible. Next, we have Senator Acosta, is a Democrat representing the people of Central Falls and Pawtucket in District 16 in the Rhode Island Senate since November 2020. He's Secretary of the Senate Committee on Finance and Senate Committee on Rules, Government, Ethics, and Oversight. Please welcome him. podium.
Thank you. I wasn't really expecting to speak, but I think it's a good opportunity to do so. And we have to keep having the same conversations over and over. You realize that there's a problem, a fundamental problem that is addressing. But there's something about the tenor of the conversations we've been having lately that's starting to give me a slight sense of optimism. A few weeks ago, I had the great honor of participating in a ribbon cutting for a new project in Central Falls, on James Park Apartments, that was transitional housing for single mothers and their young children. And at that press conference, my eyes started swelling in tears. And I was immediately transported back to about 1994, when I was with my mom, sitting in a 1984 black Ford Escort with nowhere to go. And my mother parked the car and looked at me and said, "Tonight, we're going to play a game. We're going to have fun. Tonight, we're going to do something that you don't always get to do. Tonight, we're going to sleep in the car. And we'll get to look at the stars at night, and we'll tell each other scary stories." Now, at that age, I was too young to realize the gravity of our situation. We were homeless. We had nowhere to go. But with time, it grew into a resentment and anger that I spent years trying to navigate. And a few weeks ago, after the event, I reached out to Dr. Nelkin and I said, "Thank you," because this gave those experiences purpose. It gives those experiences meaning. And so as I sit here today, just 24 hours really after it was announced that your advocacy has led to the full funding that we were asking for to address homelessness in our state this year, I feel more of that sense of purpose. Something came out of that suffering. Something came out of that misery. And that's really all that we can do with those experiences. But the work is long and tiring. And it's very complex because it's not just about shelter beds, it's also about housing construction, it's also about transitional housing. And so I'm proud that in my very brief time in the Senate, we've had the opportunity to actually start a department that is tasked with addressing this, that has to think about this as an ecosystem, that is funded to think about this as an ecosystem, so that Rhode Island doesn't continue to be perpetually dead last in housing production. And so this is just one piece of the puzzle, but it would be impossible to put this piece down had it not been for the advocacy of the people in this room. Just this morning, I received emails from my constituents, and it was one of the first times that I was really happy to respond to a concern that they had raised by saying, "Hey, just yesterday it was announced that this is covered, but don't let up because the job is not done." And so I want to thank you all for your advocacy, encourage you to please continue to fight, recruit more people for this fight, and remember that we have a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And next we have Jessica, who's a shelter resident, who can tell us firsthand about those experiences that he was just speaking of, and about many of those that have had the same experience, difficult to survive while experiencing homelessness. Welcome, Jessica.
Good afternoon. So, throughout my life, I've done a lot of things. I never thought I'd be a shelter advocate. And I know that sounds really odd, but when I first encountered my homelessness journey, as I put it, my own attitude, I think, probably held me back from finding housing, because you're only homeless if you don't work hard enough. You're only homeless if, you're not educated enough. And now I see the fallacy behind a lot of standards that people place upon people who are homeless. I'm educated, hasn't gotten me housed. I'm kind, most of the time, it hasn't gotten me housed. I was very ignorant of the barriers that are placed. It's more expensive to be homeless than it is to be housed. And I would think that's ridiculous. People are spending their money on drugs. Now, because when you don't have a fridge and your wife's diabetic and she needs fresh fruit or juice, you'll come out of your pocket and you'll spend that $7, $8, $9, $10 on one juice to make sure that they're okay. You would never stop to think of the expenses just to get to look at an apartment. I've given my friends $30 in gas just to get us there, because the buses that were coming back after looking at that apartment weren't going to get us to our shelter on time. And if we missed curfew, we'd be sleeping outside again. I'd like to thank the governor's office for the amendment, and I hope that it goes through, because without programs and funding, it's not just me with a terminally ill wife, a past bad attitude. There's a lot of us. There's a lot of us who are sick, who can't find somewhere to live. We have income. I work. My wife has income. We're in a whole program that provides our rent for a year. We're on hundreds, and when I say hundreds of lists, I mean hundreds of lists that have housing receipts that I can show proof of. We are still unhoused. There's a lot of us out there. We're not all drug addicts. We're not, and even if we are, does that mean that drug addicts deserve to sleep outside? I think no. I think that housing is a basic right. You should have 4 walls and it's also disheartening to know that despite the challenges that people like myself and my wife have, there's children, like that gentleman that just spoke up, there's children still today sleeping outside with their parents because there's not enough family shelter beds. That is a problem. It's a problem. All I can say is that people like my wife and I have plenty of us. I think many of us that are in this room right now, we appreciate that our voices are finally being heard. You know, I heard somebody say something one day. I've done a lot in my professional life. There's 2 days that are the most important in a person's life. It's the day you were born and the day that you find out why. If our voices can be used to make a change, nobody should be sleeping outside for any reason at all. So I hope to see the changes keep coming. I appreciate everybody's support for Alicia and I in our own journey. There's many of you in this room who have been part of our path and journey, and it's still not over. We're still just looking for this apartment now. So thank you as you watched our growth, and I deeply, deeply thank the agencies that have helped us on our way, especially Open Doors, Nick Horton, Dina Bruce, and Jackie Fisher. Thank you so much.
Next, I'd like to introduce Patti Corbett, who's another soldier of ours from Northern Rhode Island Regional Manager from FCCP and Community Care Alliance in Woonsocket. So we're happy to have CCA as a partner in this work as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patricia Corbett. I'm the Director of the Northern Region Family Care Community Partnership, or FCCP. The FCCP is a primary prevention program for families with children that's funded by DCYF. I'm employed by the Northern Region Lead Agency, which is Community Care Alliance, and we're one of 5 FCCP regions that serve the state. I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker, and I've spent the last 31 years working in Rhode Island with children and families and child welfare programs. The families that we serve in FCCP are referred by DCYF and community agencies such as mental health agencies, schools, coordinated entry, medical providers, families can also self-refer. The situation that families present vary widely. Housing instability has become a common issue. The issues impacting families that lead to homelessness vary widely and are complex. They can be personal tragedy, loss of income, or a choice made by a landlord. No matter where the fault lies, or why families are experiencing homelessness, it's not a child's fault. We often have families in the office so that we can conduct an intake and assess their situation and resources. The children range in age from days old, I'm not even kidding, to 17. And we meet with them and discuss what kind of resources they have and how we can be of assistance. I need one of those pointers to hold me in place now. So many of the things that I'm saying I've heard from you guys before, so I feel like we're saying the same thing. That's kind of nice. Unhoused families are spending more on food than those with a kitchen or storage or means to cook. They sometimes pay for hotels, and they spend more than they can afford, and they can't afford gas or the car, or they lose their job. They struggle to do laundry or go to a doctor or keep hold of belongings, entertain their kids, get to school, do homework, find daycare, keep relationships or friendships, and try not to have to rely on people who are unsafe. They do all that they can do every day, and then when we meet them, we ask them to do more. Our housing navigator is a person with lived experience and knows what it takes to get out of this hole. We have had families be successful in finding housing and shelter, but it's effort, and it's asking, and it's luck, and it's grit, and it takes time, too long a time. The Northern Rhode Island FCCP is part of the member agency of the Rhode Island Coalition for Children and Families. Join today's organizers to call on the state to do more to prevent and end homelessness for children and families. Homelessness may be brief or long-term, but the ill effects will last a lifetime in the health of a child. Thank you.
Also, at this point, I just want to also recognize that Representative Bennett is here, and then Senator Murray, and Representative Stewart. We're grateful to have your support, in addition to Paula Hudson from Better Lives. Thank you. Next,
Ashley.
up to you, Ms. Murray.
Ashley from
Ashley. Ashley as well. Thank you so much for being here. It's a good thing I have other younger eyes looking out into the audience. Appreciate it. Next is Kyle Bennett, the Senior Director for Public Policy and Equity at United Way. We're excited to have United Way as a community partner, a funder, a thought leader in our work, and all for the purpose of ending homelessness. We welcome you to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's sad that we have to be here today for this cause. While there are some things to celebrate, we know there's so much more work to be done. My name is Kyle Bennett, and as the Senior Director of Policy and Equity for United Way, I believe that our primary mission is to eradicate homelessness. When housing is unstable, everything else is challenging in life. So to the members of the press, the elected officials, and most of all, the people who were most significantly impacted by homelessness, I just want to say thank you for being here today. As I mentioned, our mission is to eradicate homelessness and to ensure safe, healthy, and affordable housing for all. Today, our commitment to eradicating homelessness is in jeopardy and facing formidable challenges. The budget cuts, whether 76% or 26%, they are devastating and pose significant impact on the progress that we've made to date. We're 4 years into a global pandemic, and we've recognized that the challenges that we face today are not new. They've only been exacerbated by the pandemic. The cuts jeopardize vital programs and services that provide support to people, both individuals and families experiencing homelessness. Behind every budget cut, there's a human impact. Last week, I received a call at our helpline 211, and not surprisingly, it was someone that I knew, a single person who had taken her daughter and grandchildren in after they had, their time at the shelter had expired. So in her one-bedroom apartment, she brought her daughter and 5 grandchildren to live. So when I think about the call to stay home, wash your hands, keep your social distance, and then I think of the reality of a single-bedroom apartment with 7 people living in it, when something as simple as a common cold comes up, it spreads throughout the household like wildfire, never mind COVID. and other communicable diseases. Addressing homelessness requires a collaborative approach. It necessitates the involvement of community organizations, advocates, thank you all again for being here, and government agencies. And then the most important piece is people with lived experience. Together we can leverage our collective resources and expertise to develop comprehensive solutions that tackle the root causes of homelessness and provide pathways to stable housing. Today, I urge all of the policymakers, both listening in at home, those who are present, and those who might not have been able to hear us today, to reconsider the budget cuts and investments and prioritize investing in proven strategies that prevent homelessness by prioritizing housing first and supportive services second. We can create a more equitable and inclusive Rhode Island where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. At United Way, our vision extends beyond just mitigating the immediate crisis of homelessness. We aim to create lasting change that ensures housing stability for all Rhode Islanders is real. This requires sustained investment, and I'm proud to say, and I want to thank my President and CEO, Courtney Nicolato, for being here and making the time in between meetings, but for making the commitment to investing over $1 million in housing solutions every year as United Way. We raise the dollars and invest them right back in the local community. That doesn't solve the problem by itself, but it does give us access to data. It does give us access to some of the community partners who are represented here today. And it does give us access to providing support for some of you and some of the people that you may know or that you may receive a call from. United Way stands ready to continue our work alongside our partners to advocate for policies and funding that support housing stability, that promote economic opportunity, and that advance racial justice and social justice. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for letting us join forces in creating a Rhode Island where everyone has the ability to find a safe, healthy, affordable place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate that. This time I also want to recognize Courtney Nicolato from United Way and Representative Morales, Representative Sanchez, Representative Lombardi. Thank you again. Powerhouses in front of us to do this work. Next on the schedule is Eileen Hayes, President and CEO of Amos House, and Amos House turned out and they're ready. It's the awesome. President and CEO of Amos House and has been an advocate for many years, fighting for people experiencing homelessness. Amos House is a committed partner and has stepped up multiple times to help time and time again for this cause. Thank you so much, Eileen.
So I only found out this afternoon that I was going to be speaking, and if I had written a speech, I wouldn't read it anyway. So I'm just going to speak from my heart, as I always do. But I want to start by having the folks in the room with lived experience who would like to stand up and acknowledge who you are can do so right now. About including people with lived experiences, but we usually talk about having one person rather than the whole community take front and center. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the daily struggle of folks that are really going through this. As many of you know, we've been doing this work for a very long time. And I don't know if how many of you have ever seen the movie 50 First Dates. You know, you kind of have an experience and you immediately forget it. Well, sometimes I feel like that's what's happened over the past 30 years of my work in this space. We seem to never get through the crisis. We start a calendar year where we're like gung-ho in July to think about how we're going to handle winter emergency homelessness. And then we go back in the spring, discharge people back to the street, and start all over again. That's not solving homelessness. Homelessness is not a single issue problem. It's a public health crisis. And there are many reasons for that. And it's also not just a public health crisis, it's a crisis of racism, systematic oppression that has been going on long before I was born and is probably going to continue after I'm not here anymore. And we have to look at changing the systems that we've created that keep people so stuck. We have a housing crisis. We've watched hundreds of people get evicted from apartments by landlords who have just put them out because they can triple the rents. And I know many of those people because they've come to Amos' house saying, help me, I don't know where to go. Last winter we had an 80-year-old couple come in who had been living in the same home for 30 years, and the landlord sold their home. Now that is more than just a public health crisis, that's a moral crisis, right? But we have blamed people who are homeless for their situation. Thank you, Jessica, for the words that you said, because you really actually talked about that. We're blaming people rather than creating solutions. And what we've been saying since pre-COVID was that we need a transitional plan of 3 to 5 years where we have enough shelter and a comprehensive continuum of shelter options for folks that are okay being in a 125-bed shelter, for those folks that need a smaller place where they're less afraid and they can put their head down at night and not worry about what will happen to them. We need shelters for folks that want to be in recovery so that they can be safe, and shelters where people who are actively using will have 24-hour supervision so they don't die. When we ran the warming center last winter for 8 months, we had 200 people a night. We had many people that were using substances. We had Narcan available 24 hours a day, and nobody died. Lots of people were given Narcan, but nobody died. So we have to be able to look at all of the different kinds of shelter needs that we have. We need a temporary solution, and we need to build housing. A lot of the housing that's getting developed is based on tax credits, and what's affordable is 60% AMI. That's $55,000, $60,000 a year. I know a lot of people who cannot afford that. And when I say how many units are for people who are 30%, we don't really have them in the budget because the tax credits don't support that. So we need those kinds of solutions. We need more supportive housing. We don't have enough housing vouchers. The last I heard, there were about 179 people with vouchers to get a unit that will expire in 3 months. 3 months. And they've been looking for 6 months. So they lose the voucher, it gets assigned to another new person, and that person starts all over again. This system is insane. And we need a collective group of people that are not fighting over the dollars with each other, they're not pitting one against the other, and we're really working together to find solutions that address every single unique person. Because every single person sitting in this room, they have a different housing need. And they have a right to have the housing need that suits them and makes them feel safe for themselves and their families. So I am very grateful for the dollars that we put back into the budget, or proposed, but I'm also angry because we've been doing this over and over again, and it is never changing. And until we get out of this loop, we are not going to solve homelessness. So that's it. That's all I got. So thank you.
Advocates for it. It's just like that. Thank you, Eileen. Appreciate it. Also, Representative Potter is here. Grateful to see you. Thank you. So I just wanted to add, I know that Eileen had asked for those who have lived experience to stand, and I stood because I do have lived experience, and because I've gone through very much what Jessica described many years ago, with little babies. And so I get it. And it is hard to explain to somebody else who's never had that experience, who's never understood how this impacts each and every one of us through our healthcare system, our insurances, our, the emergency departments that are overloaded. All of these things are strapped when we have the unsheltered that we do have. Kids with trauma, it's no easy task. So we need everybody, not just those in this room. Please, I appeal to all of you to reach out to those, educate people who don't have a clue, and let them know that this does have a bearing on every single neighbor that we have, unhoused or housed. Thank you to all of our speakers, including our state and local officials. I appreciate everyone's time. I know what it takes also to come out and do this. And I'm so glad to be surrounded by passionate leaders like the people in this room. Thank you for all your work. And like Eileen said, working together to tackle one of the most challenging crises in our lifetimes is what we have to do to end or reduce even homelessness in the Ocean State. So we look forward to our continued partnerships to secure the funding necessary to support the unhoused Rhode Islanders and to bring affordable housing options online and our lowest income for our lowest income residents. So together we can end homelessness, and I look proudly to be able to do that side by side with each and every one of you. Thank you.